Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. In this episode, we are going to ask the singular question, is it ready to be published? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, president of Winding Trails Media, president of St. Louis Writers Guild, and man who is crazily writing for once. And I know I've already been told I have to say this online, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. So this is being recorded. What is today's date? Today is December I've lost track. 10th. So this is being recorded December 10th, and yes, this will air in January. On November 24th, I kicked everything to the side and said the F word a few times and started working on a new project with just working on the characters for it. And from November 24th to December 12th, I have written 90,915 words on the characters alone.
Woo!
And I did not know that until I made the database mail merge with Microsoft Word as I get ready to print this stuff and do my final things on the characters. Now I still got to write the darn book or series that this is going to go with.
I'm glad it'll be a series with
all
all that character.
I'll tell you, with as much as I've gotten down to, it's I've talked about how I make characters before, so yeah, I didn't realize exactly why my fingers hurt. But with that note, I kicked this ball over to my beautiful co-host.
Who misses? Because I'm not good at soccer. My name is Kathleen Kayembe. I am a writer, not a soccer player. Thank everything that is in this world for that. You can find short stories of mine at nightmare-magazine.com and at lightspeedmagazine.com. And you can also find an essay of mine on okafrica.com. What am I doing right now? Writing a novel and blogging on anxietyinc.com. So.
Also with this is?
My name's Chanel Achan. I write things of...
I was waiting for that.
I always write things. I don't really like to put a nail on it. And I am also internally screaming forever and ever because it's application time and I can't.
Application time for what?
Yeah.
MFA program application season is underway and kicking my butt. So.
Gotcha.
Not for the kick in the butt part, but for
You need to write essays?
there will be so many essays.
There will be a conversation off mic later, maybe filled with whiskey and vodka. And also with us today is the air captain himself of steampunk.
There you go. Yes, Brad R. Cook, author of many things now. So we have the Iron Chronicles, which is out there and complete in the world. So check out that trilogy. That's for my YA audience out there. Then check out Steam Tree, the Airdranium Adventures, and that's a whole new series that's just started up for the young steampunk fans out there in the world. And because this is airing in January, do check out my latest steampunk series, which was just coming out. And it is an adult steampunk series.
Ooh.
And not that far adult.
Oh, Lee Savage, if she was here, would be crying.
Not quite Lee's adult. We're not erotic steampunk yet. But it is.
Wait.
Or Kathleen, yes.
That was a yet.
Kathleen.
That's right. Sorry, Kathleen.
She would also
shoot me later.
For the
I
non-erotic.
clearly need to write smut and make them read it so they stop forgetting that.
Nope.
Do it.
I know you're smart. Anyway, so check out that. You can find the very first chapter free online.
And on that note, I'm not sure how to follow that one up, but then there is...
I'm Melanie Lucas, and since we're recording in the past, I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing this or not come January, but I do have a list of questions to do an oral history article but I haven't done my research yet to see if I need to do the article. Because the first step is to see if anyone, in grad school has already written a PhD dissertation about what I want to write an article about. Because I want an article about the people's perceived prejudices against the Jewish experience from both the Jewish and the Gentile perspective from post-World War II to before the Civil Rights Movement.
In America.
In the United States.
Right.
Midwest United States, preferably.
Wow.
And also with this is the one who will murder you in your sleep with her words of poison. No, I'm just
Well, I'm
joking.
going to keep you awake.
I was
don't
going to
wanna-
say, in your sleep, you'd be lucky if that happens.
I'm Fedora Amos. I write Victorian Whodunits, like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. I'm president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime, and I'm going to hijack this program here for just a minute to give everybody a word of warning. I just finished a book, and that means you write ancillaries and you get up new pages on your website. So in attempting to put up new pages on my website, I made the error of, on the page I was trying to put up, I put in an extra space, okay? When it did not have any kind of character. And that brought down all hell upon my head, because then the browser does not recognize it, and this woman comes on with some accent from India and tells me that I have to redo everything and pay a fortune. In other words, something hijacked my URL. Someone out there was waiting for that mistake to happen and grasped it. So I took it to a computer doctor and he fixed it.
Wow.
And now I have a ton of security kinds of issues that get taken care of automatically and very slowly on my computer. So please, folks, double check those things, or you're going to get shuffled off to someplace. He said even if you leave an O out of Google, you can go to places like that. Please be careful. I beg you.
Yeah, that happened at my high school. Always listen to the teacher when she says .gov kiddos.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want that. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
let's get on to the topic for today, which
Not
is
mistakes on Google? That would
No.
be a good topic.
oh that Snoops would be busy after we were done. Today's topic is genre. I'm sorry, that's gonna be tomorrow's topic. Next week's topic. This topic is it ready to be published? Single question. And before I kick this thing off, I want to share an anecdote. A few months back, we did an episode on different types of editors. I forget the exact title, but where we talked about story editors versus line editors and when do you hire these people and when are they good. And I still remember somebody who commented on Facebook onto one of the groups we shared this out to, goes, I don't need to hire an editor. And they're thinking about it. And I engaged with that person. I go, so you don't need an editor because you proofread perfectly, or you've got an editor, or you know how the story is. And I go through the different types of editors. And then he goes, oh, maybe I do need to look into this. So, I don't even remember who he is, so I can't throw him under the bus, but I wouldn't anyway. Just want to put that point blank out there. We've recently NaNoWriMo has recently finished, for those who participated in it. And many people who unknowingly are trying to submit their NaNoWriMo without ever editing it. So, thus inspiring this episode. When is it ready to be published? I mean, do you do 40,000 draft? Okay, let me be honest. My first short story that was published as an adult was 27 drafts. And that was for 5,000 words, if I remember right. So do you do that? When is it when you stop doing editing, or what editing should you go to? Let's go with Brad first.
First, there is no arbitrary number.
Yay.
So it could take 5 drafts, it could take 45 drafts, it could take Hopefully not 40,000 drafts. That's a lot. You should really never stop at like 1,000. Don't go above that.
When the number of drafts exceeds your word count.
Exactly, you're done.
Mhm.
So yeah, and there's a lot of things, and you really need to. But to throw this out in a really easy way, Kathleen Ortiz had the greatest, explanation for this as to whether or not your book is ready. And she posted a while ago, I think it was last year or something like that. But anyway, it is, for anyone who knows, it's the marshmallow test. So they've run this test with kids. And they take a bunch of little kids and they put them in a room. And it's one at a time. And they give the kid a plate with one marshmallow on it. And they tell the kid that I'm going to leave and come back. And if you have not eaten that marshmallow, I will give you 2 marshmallows. But if you eat the marshmallow, you don't get anything. So then they leave. And the kids sit there. And the kids know that there is a reward coming. So some of them will not eat it. Others, the minute she leaves the room, or the test taker leaves the room, they eat the marshmallow. And Kathleen Ortiz equated this to people querying. That some people finish the book and query right away. Those people will not get a publishing contract. The people who know to wait before querying, to work and run through the process and do all of that kind of stuff, they will get the second marshmallow. And so it's a whole thing about knowing not to just snatch the first marshmallow and eat it because you really want to. And it's instant gratification right there in front of you. And to move on, there's a whole thing online about the marshmallow theory if you want to check into that. But it's a fascinating way, and it's entirely correct. Because so often do people finish their book and want to rush it off to get published. But that is not necessarily the best. It's got to be edited. It's got to be run through. You're going to want a critique group to look at it. You're going to want people to look at this thing before you send it off. Because the agent is the last person before the reader that you want to see that book. Because if the agent sees it before it's ready to go to the reader, well, you're not going to get that publishing contract. You're not going to get the second marshmallow. But if you wait, you do everything, and you wait for the agent to come back into the room kind of thing, you have a much, much better shot.
Okay, I have Melanie and then Fedora.
Sorry, as someone that was a psychology major, I just have to say that the marshmallow experiment is a very well-known and famous psychology experiment. Yes. And people that wait for the marshmallow at 5 years old are the more successful 20 years later. That's how long ago this study was done.
Wow.
And the person that did this had their own kid was one of the experimenters, so it was easier to find the people because they were all in the same classroom.
What?
I think Brad is absolutely right for a change.
Ooh.
Oh, no.
Throw down that
But it's not just a matter of waiting
No.
in order to get the reward. It's also a matter of doing the other things that need to get done. In other words, the work doesn't stop just because you've written the end. I can tell you about my process, which is that as I go along, scene by scene, I will, as I go along, revise it several times, at least 6 or 7 as I go along. Then when I do finish the book, I do not write the end until I've gone through it, the whole thing once again. And that is for developmental editing, so that the story arc is actually there, regardless of whatever else happens. The story arc is there, and all of the ends get tied up, so to speak. Then I let it sit, just really let it sit for a long time, and then begin with a critique group chapter by chapter. And that is an attempt to make each scene something worth reading and to also go through line by line, because I do both at the same time with my critique group or my critique partner, whichever one I'm working with. And that will take you to some place where you're almost ready to get finished, except then you send it to a beta reader or two and see if it's really working out in the world. So we're talking quite a lengthy process, and a process that has a lot of steps to it, a lot of things to work through as you go along, and it's very time consuming to write a good book, but it's all worth it.
Okay, Kathleen, and I've got a quick question, and then I see Brad as well.
All right, so Fedora,
Yeah.
you just gave a lot of awesome information, but I need some defined terms from you real
Sure.
quick. I think it would be helpful if you would tell everybody what a beta reader is, because, so first what's a beta reader?
A beta reader is someone, when you actually think that your book is ready for publication, you send it to somebody who likes the genre that you write in, but has no taste of this book whatsoever. And you let them read it and give an opinion without trying to prejudice them in any way or anything like that. Giving them no direction whatsoever.
So why is that helpful?
That is helpful because they represent the reading public out there that will or will not like it. And if your beta reader can point to something, if they can even tell you, well, I quit reading after 10 chapters or whatever. If they would tell you that, then you know where your problem lies, and if you know where it is, maybe you can fix it.
You also mentioned critique partners, which
Yes.
is not something I have ever had. So what exactly is that, and how does it differ from a critique group?
Well, a partner is just a partner. Eileen Dreyer always says your critique partner is someone you're riding in a pirogue down in the swamps, and your partner says, alligator here, alligator there. They point out as you go along places where they think you're likely to screw up. And this person is probably going to be someone that is really akin to you, someone that loves your genre, that knows what should happen at any given moment in a mystery, for example, which is what I do. So that they are a close personal ally in the writing business.
I have questions, but I'll leave off on that for right now. I also want us to talk about the types of editing that there are, just refresh our listeners' memories because they may not have listened to the editing episode, which y'all should go do that.
You should.
But
You really should.
Fedora mentioned a developmental editor, and there are other types. So,
What other types? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
well, what does developmental editor do that is different from, say, a copy editor or a proofreader?
They look at the book as a whole. They look at your story arc. They looked at your characterization. They look at the big picture and see if it all fits together. If the ends get tied up in a satisfactory way so that the whole piece looks as though it belongs together and is actually finished.
A developmental editor will tell you there's a problem in chapter 2. Maybe it needs to move into this scene needs to move out of chapter 2 and move into chapter 3. A copy editor is just going to tell you there's a problem with this line in chapter 2. You're using the wrong word here. And a proofreader is going to go through and say you missed that period at the end of that sentence in chapter 2. And that's your three most basic editors.
And what you get typically if you have a traditional publisher, it will go through all of those steps and you'll get it back at all of those steps.
which is why a lot of times traditionally published take about 2 years to get on on the shelf because all that's happening in the background.
Or you'll just get a 12-hour turnaround.
Oh yeah,
Where your publisher comes to you and says, you got 12 hours to go through those notes and get it back to us so it can make printing.
My word, that's cruel.
I had 72 hours. I actually got a nice 72 hours before I had to turn it in.
Yeah, that's when we
That's
saw
only
Brad
nice.
disappear.
Because it's not 48 or 71.
Yes, exactly.
That's like saying
Exactly 3 days.
Yeah.
It's really common. A friend of mine just got, she has not gotten her edits back, and her agent just told her that it's probably going to come with a 12-hour turnaround.
Wow.
Because printing. Printing is coming up. Printing is the most important date in publishing. The print date. The date that it has to go off to the printer in order to the physical copies of the book to be ready to sell on your launch date. Or the sell-by date. Because that's the first date that's going to pop up where Barnes & Noble and people like that can buy the book. So it has to get printed. There's a print. The sell date can be before the print date, but once the print date hits, that's the most important one. So before your print date will come your editing, all your developmental edits, all that kind of stuff that goes through that. Your galleys, which is once everything has been gone through the editing stage, you get your galleys. That's where the proofreading happens, because galleys are the final plates. So it's what the book looks like officially, and then you go through it and make sure that all the periods are there and all the quote marks, open quote marks, and close quote marks are there. That no font changes on page to page, or if there's italics in one section, it's supposed to be italics, and it's italics where it's supposed to be. All that fun stuff. So you can run and all of that, and it takes a lot of time, but a lot of publishers will be like, we're running out of time, and they'll just fire it off at you, and it's like any business.
Well, if you miss your place in line, then you could get shuffled off to a year or who knows how long.
Right.
You can't miss your place in line.
Or you could miss out entirely,
Right,
like
you
your
could- they
whole
could cancel
season.
you.
Yeah,
Sure.
because even if my books just came out in November, the reason I was doing that is because I need them out before everyone's bought all their Christmas presents. That's why I don't publish in December, because most people have already bought their Christmas presents by then, or their holiday presents or whatever. So by backing that up a little bit, and to be perfectly honest, most of your fall books that come out in September, October. Most of your Christmas, your holiday books come out in September, October.
I want to go, before we go too far down, what Brad and Fedora have said is absolutely 100% correct. You hear them talking about traditional published. I'm sorry, Brad, I'm jumping in line. Self-published or independent published, you need to go down the same road. I hate to say it, but you do. And you're responsible for all those levels of review. You've got to have that done. My previous job, prior to doing what I'm doing now, used to deal with the publication of, writing and publication of multiple books. I never claim them on my writing thing because parts of it was written by the federal government. But it had to be done, and the books had to be written in July, proofread by August, submitted to the printer by September, with the galleys being done in September, so they were in the hands of the people getting them in October. That's fast. It is, you don't sleep. So just telling you that right off the bat. But if you're going to do this through indie publishing, I want to throw out there, beware the vanity publishers. Beware them and run as fast as you can. And why is they will say they offer
You gotta
these
categorize
services.
that. What's a vanity press?
Oh. Let's see here. How do I politely explain what a vanity press is?
Is a vanity press someone that sits and looks in a mirror and
I was
publishes
just
your book
thinking
in
that.
front of a dresser with
Yes.
lipstick or something?
It's
Exactly.
not too far off. What a vanity press is.
I love it. No, I was
Now,
just
honestly, that's not a bad cartoon picture to paint.
I'll give you false definitions of everything if y'all don't explain things.
A vanity press is often a company, or might be an imprint of yet another company, maybe another vanity press. That basically they are people who will claim they will be able to publish your book and distribute your book for you. And you are paying them up front for all the services, including the printing and so forth.
That's the important thing to mention. This is a package deal.
Yes, this is a
So
package
you are
deal.
paying $3,000 to $5,000. You're paying this company $3,000 to $5,000, and they are giving you a book back.
Right.
And that is the reality of vanity publishing. The problem with this is, if you did it all yourself, you could get a much higher quality product for a lot less money.
And on top of that, let me add
And,
to this.
there's a predatory markup style to this to the vanity press, and that is why we are constantly warning new authors about them, because so often, you'll see these things on television, in the backs of airline magazines, you'll see them on computers, you'll see them in anywhere they can pay for their advertising. So a lot of people who don't know the industry assume this is how you get published. The problem becomes, yes, you might get, I have seen some very high quality books come out of vanity presses, and they will cost $18, $24 for a paperback. And that's ridiculous. And that's paperback, not hardcover. And you can find all kinds of different ways of doing it, but basically they are charging you everything and a markup for themselves and a whole bunch of other stuff. But if you go hire an editor, hire a layout designer, hire a cover designer, you are paying less than half of what you would be paying. The average book takes like about $1,200 to publish or so. They're charging well in excess of $3,000 to $5,000, and that's just for the production of the book. That doesn't include marketing. That doesn't include the actual copies of the physical copies of the book you have to buy, and the rest of it. It's just the actual production of the book.
The term vanity publishing came out basically with the idea of, I want to publish a book that's only going to go out to a certain number of people, and I'm having the vanity or the feeling of being an author by saying I published this book. The difference between vanity publisher and the self-pub or independent pub, in addition to what Brad has said, because Brad is right, is the quality of what you're going to get out of that vanity press in regards to what we've talked about, the step-by-step here. The editors on Vanity Press will not edit or will do minimal editing. The reason why, basically what they're going to tell you is, you're the greatest writer since William Shakespeare himself.
I was going to say sliced bread.
Well, yeah, except I don't think sliced bread ever wrote anything. So I had to choose William Shakespeare or somebody of that vein. And the reason why, they may not quite be that obvious about it, but the reason why is you are their meal ticket. And ladies and gentlemen of our audience, these people are predatory. They are the used car. I hate insulting used car salesmen by saying this, but they are the used car salesmen of the publishing world. They will see you coming a mile away, and they will prey upon your hopes and your dreams of being that published author. If I had $1 for every new author that I have run into and found out either they have gone down the vanity publishing, or they got offered to buy and they're coming to me about this thing, either through as a writer or as president of St. Louis Writers Guild, ladies and gentlemen, I would be living in Beverly Hills, California, because I could afford it. That's how predatory these people are.
So,
And I know I've got Brad still in the...
No, go ahead.
Okay.
well, I was going to change the topic a bit.
I was actually going to talk about vanity pressing and doing it yourself and stuff like that, and we just touched on it, so we're good.
All right. So we're in the publishing side of, is it ready to be published? Like, we're in the before it is released to the public, on the publishing end of this
Right.
process. That's where we are. I would like to move us back to what the writer has to do before it leaves their hands to go to an agent or to go to a press or a traditional publisher.
Yep.
Before they submit the work to someone that they don't know or that they are not paying to do a job, for example, editing, what goes into making the book ready for that?
My first answer is they need to self-edit. That's before you even turn it over to your critique partners, to your beta readers, anybody else. Reread what you wrote. Try to improve it. Try to cut the word count. By doing that, you actually should improve some of the language that you have written with. I say should, and then I'm going to turn the rest over to everybody else.
I would like to make a caveat to that, though. Stephen King is the kind of writer that writes everything down and the kitchen sink somehow in his first drafts, and he cuts like 10%, and that is his writing style. But I do know writers that will write a first draft that is more bare bones, and they have to go back in and flesh things out, add descriptions, etc. So, depending on your writing style, you may actually end up adding words.
You may. And that's where it comes through the rewriting part of it, or what I'm calling the self-editing. Because the whole idea of I just wrote a novel and then I'm going to rewrite a novel, because you're not really doing that. You're going through and you're making corrections or making things better and taking things out and basically committing suicide while you're writing it. But
Not when I do it. There is hope.
Okay,
You
and
told
that,
us
I say
first.
that because from my previous publishing, like that short story I mentioned, 27 drafts in, I didn't tell you how many hours that was. That was, I'm going to call it 5 hours. And it started off as 23,000 word multiple chapters down to one 5,000 word short story. So that's why I called it that, why I said. Anyway, I had Brad first and then Fedora.
Basically, I was going to throw out that you actually need to start a little bit earlier than that. So first you have to
Okay.
finish the book.
Well, yes.
And that's most important because if you're not finished, you really shouldn't be taking any of these next steps. Publishing, even though we're talking about how it takes 2 years or, it takes all this time, that is kind of not true. The minute that you turn it over to the publisher and the publisher says yes to it, that starts a whole road and a whole roller coaster of things that you don't have time to write with. So the book has to be done. And to be honest, every agent wants a completed book or anything like that.
Right.
You're not writing anything on spec until you're well established, have an agent, and
Or writing
all
If
that.
your name is
nonfiction.
James Patterson, you're there.
Yeah, then you can just write like, oh, here's my idea for a book, and then they go yes, and then you send it off to somebody else to write it.
That's for fiction work. Nonfiction works differently.
Yes, but
Depends.
the other
Yeah.
side of this is that once you do have it done, there are some things to do, and Kathleen is entirely right with the adding words and taking away words. I find when I go through my work for the very first time that I need to take 2 sentences and put them together because they are supposed to be one sentence, and I've written the same thing twice basically. And then the other big one that I find is having to add in words to make a scene more descriptive, more vibrant, more energetic, or something like that. So that's probably what you're going to do for the very first pass through. Really what you're doing is you're making it readable. You want to make certain all the words are there, not the ones that your brain skipped over and forgot to write down. You want to make certain that all your, that it's in a good enough shape so that your poor critique partner doesn't have to go through and do all the edits for you. But you're going to want to make certain it's readable and everything like that. And then you're going to turn it over to your critique partners or your critique group or whatever, and you're going to run it through them. You're going to work through that, and then you're going to turn it over maybe to some beta readers, and they're going to give some reading. And come back with that, and you're going to go through that, and then you're probably going to go through it once or twice. You're going to send it off to an agent. Your agent's probably going to want to run through it once or twice, and then the publisher's got editors who are going to want to run through it. So a lot of people are going to touch this book, but it does start totally with you making sure it's readable.
Right.
I think I'd back up one more step than what he's talking about. When I got my bare bones things, and maybe it's not very readable, but I know how the story's going, it's like, oh look, does this plot work? And like, wait a minute, there's this giant plot hole. This scene needs to be moved from here to there. I need to pull this stuff over there. Oh, I need to add this whole other subplot.
See, I'm going to argue that's all part of the same part of the process that he was talking
But
about.
I would do that first before I would worry about readability.
No, I can't. I guess from my point of view, I counted it into the readability. 'Cause I'm seeing the plot
it's
holes.
all in that same pass.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people who does a pass for grammar and a pass for whatever. I take each page and I edit that page. And I might only edit that page that day. That happens. We'll fully admit that. Some days I might do multiple pages. Awesome. But, I find it works best for me just to dive into the work and edit the work as opposed to doing multiple passes, only touching on one thing at a time.
I'm going to do a quick sidebar. I've got 2 dovetails here coming in. Just a quick sidebar. We mentioned nonfiction. Nonfiction world, you're going to end up being in the same boat for the most part, unless you are an industry expert who everybody wants to hear from. Like if you're Oprah, you might be able to get away with just doing, sending them a, hey, here's my idea for a book. Will you buy it? But if you're just brand new, or if you're built yourself into it, but you're not considered to be an industry expert, you're going to end up going down the same road. Fedora and then Kathleen. You're both dovetails.
Well, the first thing that I want to say is it depends on what you're aiming for in terms of publication. That will make a very big difference in how long the book is supposed to be, or the article, or whatever it is. I have a real horror story about that myself. I was doing nonfiction and was assigned or, pre-sold to write a book about something, and it was by an educational group that wanted me to write a book on mock trial, okay? And so I was all fired up, and I wrote and wrote and wrote, sent it in, and they said cut it by 2/3. Folks, you don't really want that to happen to you, so have a good idea of how long your book should be in the first place. Whatever grade you're writing for, or whether it's mystery or romance or a potboiler thriller, these have different word counts, and I suggest that you're going to waste a whole lot of time if you don't aim for that. Then, do something that Consaka and Vita mentioned early. No, I think you have to, as a writer, know your own weaknesses and what you're trying to achieve in each scene, each chapter. When you go through, after you finish the book and you make another pass at it, ask yourself what are your weaknesses. If you want to make sure that every chapter has humor, then make sure that you do that. And follow Anne Lamott's advice. Make sure that you have conflict and emotion on every page, because those are the cornerstones of what are going to make your book sellable. Also, if you have any other goals for each chapter, make sure that you achieve it in every single chapter.
I just wanted to add something to Brad's list of people that should look at your book, because this is 2017 and we like to think we're more enlightened about everybody, but we're not always. So now sensitivity readers are a thing. A sensitivity reader is basically someone from a marginalized group that will read over your story that contains someone from that marginalized group to let you know whether or not you have included anything that is culturally insensitive about that group. So it is something that you pay for. I mean, an editing pass is not free. And you can find a database of sensitivity readers at writeinthemargins.org if you are looking. So if you are not sure, for example, if you're a man, you're not sure that you wrote women very well and you don't know a lot of women that will go through and edit for you, hire a sensitivity reader. I mean, I understand that we're 51% of the population, but it's still a thing. So, and that goes for race, ethnicity, culture. I'm sure you could find someone British on there if you wanted. I'm not quite sure that's what they're giving, but still, like, if you are writing about a group that is not you, ideally find someone from that group to make sure you're doing it right. And if you don't know someone from that group, writeinthemargins.org.
And along with that, since you mentioned that, I'm going to just do a quick preview. Sometime coming in season 5 of Right Back Radio, we just haven't figured out when we're recording it yet, so I can't tell you when it's going to come out. We are going to have at least one episode, if not multiple episodes, about writing the other. So just let's let you know it's coming out at some point. Okay, so back to this. So let's say let's say I don't want to go through all those hoops. Let's say I don't want to go through a critique group because I don't like critique groups. Or I'm too shy to go through critique groups, or I don't have a critique partner. What can I do? Or what should I do? Should I just firm up or lip it, to borrow from the British earlier mentioned, and go forward anyway?
Yeah, man up, suck it up and do it.
But rather, what if you don't know how to find one?
You need them.
Then join a writers
need-
group, join the Writers Guild,
You
join
can, but
Sisters
to be
in
honest,
Crime.
all you really need are the editors. Because a developmental editor is going to do a lot of what a critique group does. And if you're paying for these services and stuff like that, you can totally do it. So you don't necessarily need beta readers and critique groups if you're heavily invested into an editor or something like that. I still recommend
If you trust
them.
the editor,
Oh,
that
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I
You really
still-
have
yeah.
to trust the editor.
You really would at that point, because they're the only one looking at the book
Right.
before it hits the...
Yes.
And that's really what this is about. It's about getting other people to look at the book before it hits the shelf so that somebody can go, maybe you should do that differently before it's out on an Amazon review that maybe you should have done that differently.
And I'm glad you said it that way because that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. Trying to make a living as an author is hard. I haven't tried yet, but I do know this is a fact. And Brad, I know you are on that road, and Fedora, you're on that road. And part of that is it's a slow road. And the thing is you can work your tail off, but you have bills that are going, pay me. So, as part of that, what are some of the ways to cut it short or to make the process more efficient to get it out there? If you're definitely a brand new writer, I don't mean, how do I want to say this? You've not been in the industry for long, is where I'm going with that. Definitely what Brad and Fedora have been saying, go for it. But if you're an advanced writer, what do you do? And I know I've got a dovetail over there.
Well, I would like to answer your question in a few ways. First off, before you give the book to anyone, you want to make it the best possible draft that you can.
Amen.
Like, if you know there's a typo on page 6, don't send it to somebody. Go fix the typo. I know it's a small thing, but if you pay attention to the small things, you probably won't let the bigger things slip and then expect other people to do your editing for you. Because if they're doing it for free, they're doing you a favor. Don't make their lives harder. Respect their time. Make the book the best that you can, whether that means going through it on your own because you know the genre well and you've done this a lot before, or get books on writing. There are so many amazing books on writing.
Yes.
Chanel asked me a question today that I didn't know how to answer, but I had a book for that. And I told her where it was in the house, so she got it. And it helped.
Yes, isn't it?
So, like, there are definitely answers. If you don't have people that can do the critiquing for you, there are books that will walk you through how to do a revision. There are online classes, so it doesn't matter where you are. You can take the class and it'll give you a step-by-step instruction for doing it. There are ways for you to learn without other people involved how to make the book the best you can make it. So get it the best you can possibly make it when there is literally nothing in it that you can figure out how to fix. That's when you let it leave your hands and go to fresh eyes.
Fedora and then Brad.
If you want to make money, I suggest 2 things. Write short, write nonfiction. And get your chops going because that will teach you, especially if you can manage to get some published, and it's possible relatively easily compared to fiction publication. Find a niche, something that you're interested in, and write nonfiction articles. It will force you to write crisply, cleanly, clearly, and that is a good start on any kind of writing. I know a friend of mine wrote articles about making bread, which may not appeal to everybody, but she was certainly able to sell it.
There you go. And to be honest with you, if you take a look at like YouTube channels and all that stuff, who do you really see out there more? You don't see that many fiction writers having lots of followings. You find the nonfiction, especially let's be a success. You too can be a success.
Oh, there's nothing better than to write a business book on how to succeed.
Yes.
If you can write that, you are set for gold, because then you get to do like the big talkie series and sell your books. Though I was thinking today, the real racket is in the textbooks, but that's going away now. Because you think about it, like a textbook's like $80 to $100, and they you sell that like 3 times a year to the entire class, the entire student body. That's a racket. That's a good book racket right there.
And the bookstores that belong to the colleges buy it back for 1/10 of the price you paid for it.
But now they're all going to electronic, and so the textbook racket is not as good as it used to be. But what I was going to say is Kathleen's point about making it perfect before you send it off to somebody is probably the most important advice we can throw out on this show. And the reason I say that is your agents, your publishers, anyone who is going to critically evaluate your work for publication has what they call the T file sitting right next to them, which is the trash can. And it used to be called that because they would actually take your manuscript and throw it in the trash. And then it became a recycling bin because we were all, conscious and stuff like that. But now it's electronic and they just put you in the trash pile on their computer and delete you. And if you can avoid that, anything you can do to avoid ending up in the T file is important. Because if you have that mistake on page 6, well, somebody's going to read that. The publisher, the acquisitions editor, the agent's, you might not even have the agent. You might just have the intern to the agent.
And worse is you don't want the Amazon reviewer to discover it. Go
yeah,
ahead.
well, you're not even going to get to the Amazon reviewer because these people are going to see that mistake on page 6 and assume that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 all have a mistake on them as well, and they're going to stop reading.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to go right in the canon. And they're done. That's it. Your shot's over. With that agent or whatever, boom, you are done. And it was that simple. You had a mistake on page 6. And to be honest, page 6, that's pretty far in. Most of them are going to get to your first page or two, before they've really evaluated your work. So it really is, you need to have that hook. You need to have all those things that we throw out on this show, on a weekly basis practically. And it needs to be as perfect as possible. Why? Not just because your work has to be in order to get there, but the other 100 books that their agent or publisher or acquisitions editor is going to be seeing that day are perfect. And anything that makes you stand out in a bad way from the rest of the crowd, that's going to get you automatically popped into the T-file because they have thousands of submissions to go through in a year. And the average agent's still getting 30 to 50,000 submissions every year.
Brad, you said you don't want to appear to be the outlier or the one who's standing out in the
Stand
bad
out
way.
in a good way, not in a bad way.
That's what you want. You don't, and I'm going to say this. No, I don't have anything as a traditional publisher. But I'm going to say this anyway. You want to stand out in a good way. You want to make your book stand out. If you make it stand out, it's going to stand out and they're going to run with it.
Yeah, but it's going to stand out for your characters and your plot and what happens in the
Exactly.
story. Maybe if you're using a beautiful lyrical, grammatical styling or something
Right.
like that, that will stand out.
You can't
But your
be
mistakes, you don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
The grammar mistakes, the plot mistakes, any plot hole that's there, you're going to hear about.
Mhm.
And you're going to get railed on it for Amazon or something like that. So you want to avoid those things as much as possible.
And what I'm saying is, you don't want to be the outlier on the bad side, but also you don't want to just be average. You want to make your book stand out.
And to be honest, if you're self-publishing
same thing.
or independent publishing, you need to make sure that book's as perfect as possible because everybody is going to point them out to you.
Mhm.
Any mistake that's in the book, they're going to be like, "Oh, I was on page 12 and you totally screwed that one word up." You're going to hear that a dozen to 1,000 times, depending on how many people come up to you. But the other thing is, we live in an industry that compares traditional books to self-published books. They still do it to this day.
Yep.
Even though there's less of a stigma about it and everything like that, they still look at it and go, "Oh, look, he's got that mistake there. It's a self-pub book. Of course there's that mistake there." Which is hilarious because if you read a James Patterson book, there are mistakes all through that thing because he didn't get edited as crazily as, so the big boys can get the editing less and less and less and less and less and less. But really, if you're doing it yourself, you need to stand out in good ways.
Can I just say, I do proofreading and editing freelance. And it bugs me when something comes to me, the proofreader, the last step before it goes to print, and there are mistakes in there that a different editor should have fixed for you or told you were there. I'm like, why is there toilet paper hanging out of your pants? I can smell it. I can see it. Why didn't you fix it? I should be straightening your tie right now.
Yeah.
That is not my job.
And
That bugs me.
And that's true.
then-
For a proofreader, that is so not your job.
And then I don't get paid enough for it. Like, they get paid more than me. I'm
Exactly.
like, I can't let this go out like this. Fix your hair. But something that does bug me, like if you get to be really successful, you will not be edited as closely as you perhaps need to be. If you'll note, the Harry Potter books got longer and longer the more successful J.K. Rowling's series got. Should they have been that long? Not necessarily. Was someone going to tell her that?
No.
Not necessarily.
No.
So I mean, if the more well known you get, the better you get as far as like success story publishing, etc. Keep in mind that people are not going to tell you when you need to quit. Like people are going to want to make you happy, and they're not going to come after your story with a pitchfork the way it deserves. With a loving pitchfork, but still a pitchfork. So you might need to start hiring editors who don't care who you are and just want your story to be the best possible. You might need to train people in your life to tell you the truth about your story, whether or not it makes you happy. Like, you're gonna have to be even more careful about editing if you get successful. So just keep that in mind, but still make it as good as you can before you give it to anyone.
Also, your big house editors do not want to do massive editing on your book. They have 100 other books to do. Yours is one in the queue. They're going to go through it. They're going to edit it because that's their job. But they really don't want to have to spend forever in your book.
And they won't.
No, and they won't.
They
This is very
won't.
true.
They absolutely won't. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close it out here with that, because I'm kind of glad what you wrote, what you said there, Kathleen. And I know writers really don't want to look at this as a business. Guess what? It is. Whether or not you like it or not, it is a business. And I know we do throw James Patterson from time to time under the bus because, hey, it's fun. He's more successful than us.
Yeah, he's the super
I mean,
successful
he's a
guy.
superstar in the story. And one of the things is, yes, he has people who ghostwrite for him or ghostwrite with him, and sometimes their name appears on the books. Sometimes I won't say it happens all the time. They appear on there. But one thing he always says is he will edit the book himself. The reason why is it's his name on the book. Your name, whatever it is, author name, is a brand. You are known by the quality of your writing. It's your brand, people. You have to own it. And you don't want anything published until it meets your brand. So with that, I want to thank everyone for listening. Tune in next week as we talk about genre mashups. Have a great week writing. Take care. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.